Happy holidays, my friends, and thank you for being here. In today's lesson, we're going to learn how to paint a detailed bird sitting on a snowy branch with some fruits. This is a great beginner's lesson or anyone that wants to learn how to work with acrylics. I'll show you how to create a smooth background blend step by step. We'll learn how to add details to our branches and leaves and fruits, and I'll even show you how I correct my mistakes. Finally, I'll show you how to add color and details to our bird. Alright everyone, let's go over the materials we need for this project and have lots of fun. This is a 16 by 12 studio canvas. It already has gesso coat on it. That's why it's white, so I don't need to add anything to it. You could add a glaze of water and let it naturally dry, and that will tighten up your canvas. For brushes, we're going to use 2 of my M1 blending brushes. We're going to use my 4-piece brush set, and this is what's inside. Number 8 and number 4 brushes. And then we have a 1/2 inch flat brush and a 0 detail brush for all the little fine details. For paint, I'm going to use my 24 set of acrylics, and I'll show you which colors from this set. Medium yellow, crimson red, sap green, viridian, phthalo blue, and lamb black. From my 5 set of acrylics, we're going to use titanium white. We need palette, and I'm going to use my palette paper here and a palette knife to mix your paint. A jar of water, some paper towels to clean some of your brushes or clean your palette knife. Finally, if you have a hair dryer, go ahead and use that. It speeds up the drying time. We want to make sure our background is dry before applying our next layers. You could use any materials you have available, but if you are interested in using what I'm using, check out ColorByFeliks.com. I'm actually doing a big holiday sale, so if you've been eyeing my blending brushes or my paint sets, this is the best time to get them for a great deal. Okay, let's quickly go over the plan for this piece. I like to start from the furthest distance and work my way up to whatever is closest to me. I think that's the easiest way to work with acrylics. So we're going to add the blend of the background, and it's going to be simple. We're going to cover the whole canvas. We're going to have a glow right here, and then it's going to transition to darker colors. And then from there, once it's dry, we're going to sketch out the branches and the placement of our bird. And your bird size could be bigger or smaller. It does not have to look exactly like mine. And so after we added the placements and a quick sketch of our bird and branches, we're going to add our first layer and kind of start to add some color. After that, we're then going to step back and see if we like the positioning or if we need to make something bigger or smaller or correct something, right? This is the time to do that. And then we're going to finalize by mixing more colors and making our bird and branches and leaves pop more with color. So that'll be our 3rd and 4th layers. Let's have fun and see what happens. Remember to take breaks and enjoy the process. So now let's go into mixing our colors for the background blend. Let's start with titanium white, and in the corner we're gonna create colors from lightest to darkest. So I'm gonna add about, I would say, 1.5 thumb amount of white here, and then thumb amount maybe similar to that one, and then a little less each time, maybe a thumb amount here, and finally last one, it's going to be 1/2 thumb amount. And by the way, I do have a color mixing guide, so if you'd like to follow along and get the exact ratio of each color, there's a link in the description down below for you to download for free. So for now, I'm going to close the lid so that paint will stay fresh. And let's pick up medium yellow and add a little bit of that on top in here, right there, and a little bit on here. Okay, next we're going to pick up crimson red and add a little bit in here for our first one, a little more on this one, and then small touch in here, and actually on the last one as well. A little more on the last one. Next, I'm going to pick up phthalo blue, and I'm going to add phthalo blue onto this one, and then a little more on this one, more than the red. Okay, and finally, lamb black. I'm going to add that to this one, just a small touch, and then a little more to this one, like this much, because I want it to be more neutral on the gray side, because I want my bird and the leaves to pop out more, right, than the background. So I want to make it neutral, and white and black helps dull the colors. That's why I'm not using too much color, as you could see. So let's pick up our palette knife and start with the lightest. And we're gonna see what we get. And if we need to add more, I will explain and show you. So this is a good color. It's like a light peach, pink, leaning towards pink, but it has a little bit of warmer color. Okay, just mix it, and then once you're done mixing, you just pile it up like this. Let's move on to the next color. It should start transitioning to more of a pink color. And finally, bunch it up like this. Okay, finally, or next color. Okay, I like this color. Because of a little bit of black, it made it not too intense, which I like. I want my background to be simple and soft. Okay, and finally, a little bit of blue on the outsides, because we want to transition from warm colors to cooler colors, but still keep it on the red side. That's why I decided to add crimson red to the last one. I don't want it to be too intense in blue, but this is good. I'm going to add a little bit more lamp black to this one, just a little more, and also crimson red. I want to make it a little more darker, so that the transition will be softer between these two. I want it to be a little darker, not too much. That's much better. Okay, and I'm actually going to do another trick here. I'll show you. So what I do is, so these are good, right? And then between this one and this one, there's a little bit of a not as smooth transition because it becomes darker quickly here. So what I'm going to do is actually wipe my palette knife, because I have some paint here, different kinds of random paint, real quick, like this. It doesn't have to be super clean, but I'm going to take part of this, very small amount, not a lot, as you could see, and I'm going to mix it with this one. That way, when we go into blending, it's all these colors are going to be kind of mixing together, and this just, if you get a nice blend mix of colors here, it just makes it easier to blend on the canvas, to create transitions between colors. So this helps a lot. So just a little bit, and that made it much better. Maybe even a little more. I'm going to take a little more because it's still on the lighter side. I don't want it to be too dark because I still want the transition between this one and this one also smooth. So just a little bit more. Okay. And it doesn't have to be perfect. As long as you get something similar, you know, your background could look a little bit different. That's fine. Okay, we're done. Again, here's the colors. All right, so now we're going to pick up a water jar and one of our M1 blending brushes. This is a quick process, so I'm going to dab it all the way in the water, and water helps keep acrylics stay wet, So once I'm done adding all my colors, then with a dry blending brush, I'm gonna blend all the colors smoothly and nicely. So all the way in the water and then squeeze part of it out. Okay, we don't want too much water, but there is still some water in here, okay? So I'm gonna have my water jar next to the canvas. So sometimes if I need more water, I'll dab just a tip in the water and then pick up more paint so that I can have the right amount of water and they won't dry out. If I just use water in one spot and then just use paint, it's gonna dry out certain spots. So that is why I constantly dab my brush in water and make sure it's spread equally everywhere. So with a little bit of water and my first color, we're going to quickly pick up all the paint like this, right? And we're going to randomly, the glow is going to be somewhere here. If you see bubbles, that's a good sign. That means you have the right amount of water. But if you start to see water dripping, that means you have too much water, and I would encourage you to pick up more paint, kind of swirl it and equalize it, blend it, okay? So a little bit of that color in here. Okay, and now I'm going to dab my brush slightly, just a tip in the water, right? And then pick up my next color, this pinkish color we have mixed. Start to go around lightly. So maybe you go back to this lighter color. I want this to be pretty light in the corner here. Okay, and then back to the pink. Right, it's running nice and smooth on the canvas. I'm gonna use a little more of this color, lightest color. Kind of swirl, blend it, and now I'm gonna dab my brush lightly in the water. I'm gonna use a little more of this pink on the corner here, and then here, lightly dab my brush in the water, just a tip. I'm gonna go to the darkest color. Not the darkest, the second to the darkest, I mean. And then start to make it a little darker on this side. Okay, just a little bit, not too much. Maybe even go back to this color. All right, dab my brush lightly in the water. I'm going to use this pink color. And then as I go down, I'm going to start to use this color. Go back to the pink. I want this to be more on the pink side on the corner. And then here, I'm going to start to transition to this darker color. Right? And finally, our darkest color is bluish gray. And you can move your canvas to whatever is easiest for you. Lightly dab my brush in the water, pick up more paint, and gently press, swirl, and add that next final color. Make sure your canvas is covered nicely, right? With paint and water, okay? And that's good right there. So now I'm going to put my brush down in the water jar and pick up my blending brush, dry, right? And now I'm going to blend everything in, starting from the lightest area and gently pressing, not pressing hard because we don't want to peel paint off. We just want to take the brush strokes away and create smooth blends. You see how that works nicely? And if you see sometimes when you get a new blending brush, you'll see some hair, loose hair will come off. It shouldn't come off a lot. Just in the beginning, you have to break it down. And so if you see, like right here, I have one. I'm not even going to pluck it out. There's an easy way to take them out. Basically focus on blending. Don't even pay attention to the hair. And then once it's dry, once you're done blending, once it's dry, with a hair dryer, it just sometimes flies off, or I simply just lightly scratch and it will come off without damaging the canvas or anything. So it's not going to peel off paint or anything. That's the nice part. So don't worry about those if you have, especially like I said, the more you use your blending brushes, the less they'll shed because they have been broken in, right? So continue blending. Take away all the brush strokes from lightest to darkest. Very easy. Why I like this method is because it covers the canvas very nicely. I'm not peeling off paint, and the blending brushes are soft, the hair, so it spreads the paint, right? And it just takes away that white canvas showing through. And so you still get that thicker layer of paint on your canvas, as you see, because the brush is soft. Okay, and there you have it. Nice smooth blend of the background. We have a nice glow and a darker transition here. I'm going to let this dry, clean my blending brushes, and we're going to continue to the next part. All right, the background is dry, and I'm going to continue to the next part. I'm going to sketch out the placements real quick with my detail brush and some water. I'm going to use up the paint that I have left. I'm just going to use the darkest color for now. This one with water. Okay, just water and this color. And we're going to quickly do these branches first. So for example, there's going to be one, maybe I would say like an inch, 2 inches. It's going to come down almost halfway right here, slightly to the corner right here at an angle, right? And this is just to give me an idea, okay? So it's going to be skinny for now. I'll make it thicker later. Continue on with water, right? Going kind of sideways right here, and then another branch. I know it looks kind of random right now, but you'll see. And then another one. And here, we're going to come down all the way up to here. So since this color is the same, I'm going to go with the lighter color randomly, right? Like this. And then it'll come down, blend it all in randomly. This is just to give me an idea. It's going to be rough, like I mentioned. So this, back to this darker color and water. And we're going to add some more branches here. Like this. It's going to come down and probably go in almost halfway. Half of the canvas right here. Go in this way. Okay, continue with water. And we're going to add a little connection here. Something like that. And you can create, your own waves, like the shape of them, the way you like it. Okay, maybe there's another one, branch going in. And I'm going to go back to the lighter color now with water, okay? And there's going to be another branch right in here. There'll be like a little, we're going to draw some leaves in here. There'll be a branch kind of coming in and then disappearing in here. Okay, so I'm going to quickly switch, clean my detail brush, quickly switch to my number 4, dab it in the water, and I'm going to use this lightest color. Okay, with water, and we're going to add some leaves. And this is going to be a rough sketch. Okay, continue. And maybe there's one facing us. And fade it out like this. And I'm drawing them kind of smaller because I want to take a step back once I'm done. I want to see if I like the placement of them before really making them, you know, more detailed and bigger or whatever, right? So now here, right, I have this branch here kind of coming off on the side, and this is where the snow will be, and this is where the bird starts to sit on this area right here. Okay, I know it's random. Let's go back to, let's use this lighter color, this pinkish color with water. Okay, let's quickly sketch out our bird. Our bird is going to be looking this way. So we're going to have the head be somewhere by the branch, maybe an inch right here. And it's going to go around. Always start small. You can always make it bigger, okay? Remember the snow right here? Make it kind of circular, and then it's going to go in, probably right in here. Continue with that color, and we're going to draw the tail, and it's just going to fade in. The beak, this is where the beak will be. Make this a little bit rounder. In here, not too much. And then bring it down. That's the tail, right? And this is going to be where the darkest shadow of the bird will be. So I'm going to use that dark blue, right? Randomly add it in. And then right here where the neck is. And then here where the wing is, also dark colors. Okay. And then we're going to add the legs, right? The legs will be, the first one will be right in here at an angle. This, and also the second one at an angle, standing on this branch. And we're going to work on the feet later, but something like this. Okay? So this gives us an idea, right? And we can make it bigger or smaller. For example, I do want to make this a little bit more fuller. So I'm going to make it even more. You know, things like that. Adjusting, correcting, right? All right, for now that's good with the darkest color. remember where the snow is. I'm just gonna quickly go over. There's gonna be these little red. Actually, let's use a little bit of crimson red straight out of the tube, just to give a little more color. And with water and the red, right? You can even mix it with this, actually. Make it not too intense, whatever color you have left. Remember, this is our first layers, so it's all gonna look rough, but we're just trying to get an idea. Okay, maybe a little more red. Maybe some of them almost kind of blend in. A little more red. Okay, and then right here I'm going to add some showing little ones. And I'm mainly using water. Water with a little bit of paint. That's why it's running smooth. Okay, so then by the tail there's going to be a couple more of these. You could add as many as you want. I'll start with 4 or 3. Maybe there's one small one right here. Something like that, right? And then there's going to be another one somewhere right in here. Okay, I'm going to dab my brush lightly in water, use the red again. Okay, just a little bit of that. And then maybe there's one right here. Okay, we'll correct later. And I think I'm going to add one small one in here. Why not? Maybe add another one right in here. That's good. All right. I'm going to add some more of these in here. So there will be one here. Okay. Continue with that red. Right next to, right here, there's going to be some showing through. And you'll see what I mean by that. Maybe there's one in here. Okay, for now, that's good. We can always add more later. I'm going to clean my brush. I'm going to continue. Let's continue adding with the lightest color and water, right? Let's continue adding some leaves. So right here we added one, and then we're going to have a big one almost overlapping this part. And it's going to more rounder, bigger. Make it a little fatter, thicker, because this is closer to us. And then there's going to be another one. Okay, this is just to give us an idea. There's some in the background there. Maybe another one going inside. There's going to be some snow on top. Snow on top in here. And then in here, there'll be some leaves, hidden leaves. Let's add a little bit of sap green, straight out of the tube, like we did with the red and water. Just the green by itself. We're gonna fill it in. This is just, like I said, to give you an idea, to show you what is what, right? Like, because when I'm talking about the snow, it'll kind of looks the same to you, right? So I'm gonna add a little bit of green here. Okay, I'm gonna continue sketching with the lightest color. Let's add some more. Let's add some more in here for fun. There's gonna be some on this side. Make them kind of sharp looking, you know. You could use the green to fill it in. Just the green color and water. So a little more of this lightest color. Let's use this darkest color. Mix it with a little bit of the green. I want to make it lean towards the green more. Okay, that's much better. Something like this. And we're going to add some leaves showing through in here, some sharp ones. Remember, there's a snow right here. We'll go over those parts later. We're just adding the darker shadows of the leaves. Okay, something like this. And continue on. Some more green in here. A little bit of light color so you can see what it is. Right? Some leaves inside coming towards us. Make this a little bit lighter in here and add some in here. Randomly make them go different directions. Let's add some branches inside, for example. There's going to be a branch with the lightest color. Going in, and then there's one. You could use the darker color too. With the green, randomly mix those. We're going to mix more colors, right? But for now, we're trying to get the rough placements. So more branches and leaves covering some parts here. We need darker shadows on this part. So that's why you can't really see well what's going on. But something like this. Okay, I'm going to make this a little bigger here. Okay, I'm gonna add white by itself because I wanna add a few lighter snow areas so you can see the difference. And I'll show you. I'm gonna switch to my number 8 brush because this is the bigger parts. So just the white and my number 8 brush. We're gonna take this and add some snow, for example, in here, right? Just gonna add even if you go over your sketch that you already did, that's fine. We're just looking at this and getting a rough idea, right? More snow on top of here. More snow in here, right? On top of these. Okay, some snow in here where the bird is sitting. This is so you guys can see a little bit more clearly what's going on. A little bit of snow on top in here. Okay, a little bit of snow on some of these on top. All right, I'm gonna switch to number 4 again. Continue with the green and this blue, darker gray blue. Randomly mix those colors. And we just want a darker color. And then here, I'm gonna add a leaf in here. I know it looks random. Maybe there's going to be a little one in here. Okay, let's add lamb black straight out of the tube, and we're gonna add a little bit of color. Start to add darker color on our bird. For example, with our number 4 brush and water, I'm gonna add a little bit of this dark color right here. Just the black and water, it's still gonna look rough. Okay, something like that. And then we can add a little bit of red and maybe this orange. Just lighter color. Add some darker red shadows in here. We're going to add a little bit of medium yellow straight out of the tube. And this is like going into filling in with color, so you could call this that first layers going into the second. So a little bit of yellow just to give color to the bird. And remember, we're going to be adding more details to our bird and all the beautiful details. So mix it in with the pink. Okay, and here we're going to add white. So I'm going to clean my brush completely and just white straight out of the tube. We're going to add a little bit of lighter color. And remember, this is just so that we can see how it looks. We'll step back, and if we're happy, we'll leave it the way it is and just mix more colors, similar colors, and start to really, fill it in and add the beautiful details. But this will make it more visible for us to see the picture before we make those final decisions. So with the white just by itself, and fade it out. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to use this red, a little bit of orange, randomly mix it with a touch of black. It's going to be leaning towards more like a brown color with water. We're going to go over some of the branches. Still rough layer. Adding a little bit of color, right? And making our branches thicker. Gently go over. We don't want to add too much, mainly water, right? And then as you go lower, you can add more black to make it darker. You can make it thicker as well, because as it goes lower, right, the branches become a little more black. Randomly mix that. You want to make them thicker. So dab my brush in water, use black and some green. Add some darker shadows, rough layer. So a little more green and black with water. Okay, I forgot about this branch, so I'm going to quickly add this branch, the darkest color and randomly kind of add it like this. And now we can take a step back and see if we like the positioning and the placement of our bird and where the leaves are going to be, right? Obviously, I'm going to make some of them bigger and sharper and cleaner, but this is the moment to really think about your composition and if you like something. For example, here, I might make my bird just a little taller. Just for me personally, I think it would look better if it was just a little bigger right here. And so this is where I'll correct and spend some time playing with these colors that I have. And once I'm done, I'm going to show you what I get. And also with a flat brush, you can play with, for example, like red and orange with a little bit of black again. Mix randomly those colors, and then you can add these like sharp details like this, right? Maybe there's one. You can make them as long as you want. Okay, so a little more. Some more black and red. Just adding a few more branches for fun. And here's what we got so far. I spent some time correcting. I wanted my bird, it was kind of skinny, so I made him a little bit more bigger, right here, wider, and the head a little taller. So I adjusted a little bit. The feet were on this side. I kind of painted and did my best to cover the back and then added new feet right here. Yours could be, if you like your placement of your feet, leave it as it is, right? Totally up to you. And I added a little more branches and made some of my leaves a little bigger, up here, closer ones especially. And I kind of quickly sketched out so I could see better with titanium white some of these details. But we're going to go over this again. Now that I'm happy with it, I'm going to mix some more colors and start to really define it and make it more cleaner. If you've been enjoying this lesson so far and want to help support this channel, check out my Patreon. It's a great way to be a part of the creative process and help keep these tutorials ad-free and accessible to everyone. Inside Patreon, you'll get access to high-res reference photos, commercial-free versions of my YouTube lessons, behind-the-scenes content, and you can even help me vote on future painting topics. It's a small way to support this free content, but it makes a big difference. Thank you to everyone who supported me over the years. I appreciate you all. Now let's get back to painting. All right, for the leaves, we're gonna have these colors. So this is half a thumb amount of white, a little bit of medium yellow and sap green, and then less white here, the same amount of medium yellow and more sap green. And then medium yellow, a little bit of that, sap green more, and then viridian about the same amount. Okay, by itself, and then viridian by itself, and then viridian and lamp black. And here's the colors, right? So now for our branches, right, I added a little bit of white, half a thumb amount of white, medium yellow, touch of lamp black, and then crimson red. And then less white here, more medium yellow, and then more crimson red, and more lamp black. And then lamp black, more of that, and a little less crimson red. So as I was mixing, it wasn't giving me, I want it to be more on the warmer side. So I added a little more medium yellow here, and that helps it make it warmer. And finally, for our snow, I want to make sure I create some shadows in my snow, right? I don't want it to just be white, right? So this is what I added. Thumb amount of white right here by itself, and then less white, half a thumb amount. Very small amount of phthalo blue, and then a touch of lamp black. And then as you can see, less white here, a little more phthalo blue and lamp black. And here are the colors we got so far. I'm not going to mix any more colors, so for these ones we're going to mix them later and we're going to detail the bird later. For now we're going to focus on the branches, detailing those, and the snow and the leaves. Those are the three things we're going to focus on, and I'm going to zoom in the camera and we're going to work from the top going down. Alright, let's start with the branches first, and then from there we're going to work on our leaves and then snow last. So I'm going to pick up my number 4. I had it sit in the water while I was mixing paint so it could be damp. And so here I don't like this branch going straight up, I wish I curved it more, but that's okay. I'm going to fix it the best I can. And so I tried to fix it by adding this skinny branch right here, but I still don't like the way it looks. So what I'm going to do is actually try to make another branch kind of going in. So I'm going to use my number 4, and let's start with this middle color, right? This one. And what I'm going to do is try to make this curved. So I'm going to continue, make this one go in. And it's okay if you go over your bird. Let it curve, and it'll disappear in the snow. Let's have this branch go a little higher, and this one kind of going out. I want to make sure I'm happy with my branches. Okay, as I was looking at this, I still don't like this branch right here going straight up. I'd rather keep this curve going in here. So what I'm going to do is try to kind of erase this. And this is how I do it. So I'm going to mix the best I can to match the background color. It might not be perfect, but that's okay. So what I'm going to do is add a little bit of white, medium yellow, and crimson red, small amount. Okay, and then less white, and then crimson red and medium yellow, about the same amount, but I'm going to take part of this blue. So maybe a little bit of just a little bit of this color. Okay, and you don't need to do this. You could skip this part. This is just for me. I just really don't like this branch going straight up. So I'll show you how I correct it. But if you like yours and you want to leave it, you totally can, and we can continue to the next part. But I'm going to fix this and erase this. So first, I'm going to mix this color. Okay, I'm going to mix these and then I'll show you what I get. Okay, so I'm going to try my best to match the background color, right? And remember, something to keep in mind with acrylics, your colors, when you have it on here, when they dry, acrylics tend to darken in color. That goes with any acrylics. It just always happens like that, okay? Because it has water, and once it dries, it becomes a shade, very light shade darker. Keep that in mind. So I'm looking at this and do my best to match it, but even if it's a little bit darker, then that means I need to add a little more white to it. But if it's same color, if I got it pretty close, I would still encourage you to add just a little bit more white. You want it to be just a hint lighter than the background, very small amount. Then once it dries, it'll look the best. It'll match the background the best, right? Because it'll darken in color. Something to keep in mind, okay? So I have these colors. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to use my number 4 brush, and remember it's a lighter area here, so I'm going to start with this color and I'm going to add the first layer, and it's going to still be see-through. Let it go down, and then as I go down, I'm going to obviously use this pink color but you could see the color is a lot darker, still darker, and you could see that transition happening, so I don't like that. So I'm going to quickly clean my brush, use this white that we added, and just randomly mix it. And that's how I work if I don't like a mistake or want to change something, right? And it's okay if you paint over your ranch. This is the part where you spend time on correcting and fixing before you really start to add your final details. Okay, so you see that rough sketch, you kind of still see it's not smooth. I'm going to let it dry. You want to make sure your background is dry, because if I keep adding layers, it's not really going to take away that background color. So make sure this is dry, and now once it dries, then I'll repeat the process and blend it as best as I can. And this is something to keep in mind, that water helps a lot. With a little bit of water and some paint, right, you can really blend the colors into that background color, sky, right? And you can swirl and press and really take away the sharpness. And I'll do that once this is dry. You could see it became a little more darker. It did take it away a little bit, right? So now adding the next layer, it's going to be even more smoother. And that's, by the way, that's what I did with the legs here. Remember, I told you I switched it up. And I moved the legs a little bit because I made my bird bigger. So I had to reposition those. But that's what I was doing here. And you could see the background, it's not perfectly smooth. It's because I only did the first layer and I just took a break for the day. But this is where I'll correct and blend those in as well, like I'm showing you here. Okay, so repeating the process with the colors, I'm going to use my number 4, make sure it's damp. And because I know that these colors are darker, I'm going to use a little bit of white, right? White. And a little bit of this color. So make it a little lighter. And then because I have water, it blends in smoothly. It doesn't make it look rough. So you see, it's a little bit lighter. Now I'm going to use a little bit more of this color and less white, because I'm going down, it gets a little bit darker. And then, of course, as I go down even more, I'm going to switch the color. So I'm going to use white and a little bit of this darker pink color we have mixed with a little bit of water. Okay. And I'm going to do my best to match the background. And then you can even go up a little bit. Blend it all in because you have water, right? And I'm just blending this section in. That way it doesn't look like just this part is being painted. You could even bring a little bit of that color that you have down, right? Swirl it with a little bit of water so that it'll look smooth. Okay, so now this is the second layer. It's still looking rough, but that's okay. I'm going to let this dry real quick, and I use a hair dryer to speed up the process. So once it's dry, I'm going to add one more layer, and it's really going to take that away and make it blended with the background smoothly. And so here, while that's drying, by the way, right here, I want to correct that, right? So what I'm going to do is, this is more of a darker color, so let's just try this color and see how that looks. So this color and some water. Let's just blend it, see how that looks. I like it. You see how the second layer takes those shadows away, right? So a little more of that pink color and blend it out. Let it go up and blend it out. Okay, so I'm going to use that, continue using that color. I like the way it looks, and go in here. Make this a little bit darker. I want to create that space between this bird. So now what I'm going to do is add a little bit of this, mix it with this, just a little bit, so that it can, and remember my brush is still damp, and I'm just blending it, trying to create that smooth transition. Okay. All right, so maybe even a little bit of that lighter color inside here. Okay, I'm gonna let this dry and see how it looks, and if I need to add one more layer to make it more solid and clean, I will do that. Okay, so I'm gonna clean my brush in the water, and now that this is already dry because it was a thin layer, so I can repeat the process one more time. So white, right? And a little bit of this color first. Let's glaze it, and maybe a little more of this yellow peach color that we have mixed, and glaze it with water. And you could kind of start to see that it's covering it nicely. And as I go down, I'm going to use a little bit of this and this pink. A little bit more on the pink side now. Not adding too much paint. Just adding a glaze. That's how I erase and correct things. And then just bring it down as far as you want. Blend it out to that background color. I'm stepping back and I'm looking at this. It looks so much better because it's like more of a curve. It's not just a straight line. So that's what I'm looking for in every painting. I want to make sure my positioning of everything is balanced. It's not taking my eye into one part, right? And it was really taken away right here, this part. It was something off there. That's why I wanted to fix that. And this was a great opportunity to show you. Sometimes mistakes are good and I leave them, right? But sometimes you do want to correct and adjust. And you don't need to worry about trying to make exact color of the background. This is where you just work in little sections and mix closest as possible to the background color, but then play with white or the darker colors that you have. Maybe you need if we worked on the bottom part of the, darker areas, I'd be adding a little bit more phthalo blue or lamp black, right? I hope that was helpful. So now with the detail brush, I'm gonna go back to this darker brown color, and I'm gonna make this a little more darker. So we'll see remember there's a little detail here. I'm gonna add that, keep that one, and I'm gonna keep these as well. And then maybe even add a few more. Let's have this connection be this one. It's totally up to you. Okay, we're going to go over these fruits, or whatever you call them. All right, so now I'm going to go over this part. And then maybe there's like a little couple of these sharp ones. So now I'm going to continue with this middle color in my detail brush and going over and adding the dark shadows, making it more defined, cleaner looking, and just going over everything. There'll be some snow in here, and I'll show you. It's going to look really good once we start to add highlights, and it's going to start to look more detailed and not flat. Right now it's looking flat, but it's going to look better. So I'm going over this part again. So that's what I'll do. I'm going to spend time going over all the branches and adjusting and adding all these little details. Right? So have fun with this, and I'm going to cover this part right here. And here's what I got so far on top, okay? And now, before going down, I'm going to show you how I do my highlights here. So, for example, these are not finished here, right? Some of these branches. So I'm going to use actually a little bit of a lighter color with water, because these are a little bit more in the back maybe. You can mix it a little bit with this darker color, but not too much. We just want it to be a little darker, but still be in the background. Maybe we can, yeah, let's continue. I'm going to add a little bit of it. Maybe it's coming out right here just a little bit. Not too much. Okay, that's good. All right, so next we're going to add some lighter highlights. Let's just use this color and some water. And then we're going to go over on the side real quick on certain parts. We're going to make it a little lighter, creating a little bit of a lighter highlight. Lighter detail inside, so it could look more 3D. Okay, real quick, this is a little detail that you can barely see, but it makes a difference. Okay, so that's what I'll do. I'm going to go over these and add the highlights, sometimes in the middle and on mostly around the sides, because you want to create the highlight from the glow of the light, right? So some of them have the highlight inside. Okay, and finally, I'm going to add some snow. So I'm going to clean my detail brush, and just the white by itself, we're going to add some snow. So for example, we're going to have some snow inside here, and this is going to be fun because this is where it's going to start to stand out even more. That's exciting to me. some snow in here, a little bit, not too much. We don't want to overdo it. Okay, some snow maybe on top. Right where you think the snow is sitting there. That's where we want to add the white. Okay, so I'm going to spend some time adding my snow. And here's how it looks so far. You could see I also went over some of these inside with white, right? For example, right here you see how I just kind of went inside a little bit to create some separation, maybe some snow. It's a little bit on the inside of our branches, right? We don't want it to look flat. That is why I do this. And now with the darkest color is the final detail. We're going to add on certain parts, for example, right here and right here, darker highlights, not everywhere, just a few areas so that you could start to see a little bit of some darker shadows. So with water and your darkest color as the final detail, we're going to go over. Let that fade. Skip some areas, right? That'll bring it nicely together. So now I'm going to continue what I just did to the top, but bring it down and finish the branches to the bottom. And I'm going to use my number 4 because these are a little thicker. So I'm going to actually start with the darkest color because it's going into a darker tones, right? So I want to make sure I for example here, I add that. So I'm going over the big parts first with my darkest color. And there's not many branches left, so. Okay, real quick, some of these are going to be hidden behind the leaves. But there you go. You could see not a lot left. All right, that's good enough. And add the lighter highlights. Let's use just this color alone and continue on. We're going to add those highlights inside and on the edges, right? We're going to continue that style of painting. A little bit of on the inside to give it more depth. Very small amount. This is the easier part because these are more on the darker parts, darker shadows, so you're not going to see too many highlights. we just added more of the lighter highlights on top because that's where the light is hitting more. So in here, I'm just going over a little bit. And I'm going to correct some of these branches. I'm going to go to the middle color and correct, make them a little cleaner like we did with the other ones, right? And just add a little more detail like this. Clean it up a little bit. Same thing here. Maybe add some, let's use the darkest color. Maybe add some little spikes in here. Little bumps, separations. So maybe that branch is connecting inside here. And now for the snow, I'm going to repeat the process and add some white with the detail brush. Let's add snow. We're not going to add it everywhere. I want to skip some areas. But I do want to add, for example, right here, right? I want to add a little bit of snow in here. Like this. And then maybe some in here. Very few spots. Okay. And that's it. So I'm going to spend time like I did with the, correcting some of the branches, but that's pretty much it. I'm not going to overdo it. And once I'm done, the next step is working on the leaves. Since we're on the bottom part, let's continue from here. We're going to work on our leaves, adding that other layer, making them look a little more smoother. So with our number 4 brush, and these are the colors I have, I'm going to start from, let's just start from the bottom and work our way up. So we're going to work from this one this way and just work our way up. So for this one, we're going to start with, let's start with the darker shadows. Let's start with this, maybe this green, mix those randomly. Let's see how that looks. Okay, we're going over the darker shadows first and randomly glazing it. Okay. I'm not going to go all the way down because with the detail brush I'm going to sharpen them later. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing with a little bit of this color. I'm going to add some green shadows, make them a little more colorful. Okay, dab my brush in the water. Use these 2 colors for now, and I'm just adding the very bright highlights of color on some parts. Okay. All right, let's use just this color now, and we're going to make this pretty bright in here with color, bright green. And it's going to fade out to a darker color. You can see I'm kind of randomly adding it. We're not trying to make it perfect. Maybe there's highlights. The light is hitting on and it's bending, right? That's why you want to create that shadow in the back, right? Because maybe these are coming in front of us, right? We're thinking about how to create depth, right? So that's why I'm adding the brighter green colors first. Okay, so maybe in here a little bit. And then a little bit on top, going over. Okay. All right, so that's good enough for now. Now, I'm going to clean my brush. I'm going to use the lighter highlight first, this next green color. And let's add it on some of the parts here. Not everywhere, just some. So a little bit of water. Okay, that's good enough. And then maybe here on the edge a little bit. Something's happening here, right? And then here. Very little. I want this to be dark. Let's add that lighter highlight in here. Very small amount, so a little bit of water and this green. Let's add that in here. Okay, that's good. I'm not going to add too much in there because I want to keep it dark. We'll add some in here on top though. Something like that. A little bit of water. And then go over this. Make this a little brighter. Okay, dab your brush in water. Use a little bit more. And then a little bit on this side, not too much. That's good enough. And then in here, I'm going to add a little bit of the lighter highlight, just a little bit. That's good enough. I'm going to clean my brush and I'm going to add a little bit of the lightest highlight with water, not too much paint, and I'm going to go over only certain parts where I want my leaves to really pop. Okay, so for example, I'm going to add a little bit more brighter colors in here, so I'm barely pressing, not trying to make it smooth because I kind of like it looking rough. So I'm going to go over lightly in here, a few areas, not everywhere. Okay, like this, and then maybe in here. Okay, that's good right there. So a little more of this brighter color, and then here I want to make this a little bit brighter. That's good right there. And maybe a little bit inside here, right? And then in here, because the light is maybe shining through and hitting part of this leaf in here. Same thing here. All right, that's good. Very easy, simple, right? We're not overdoing it. And now I'm going to clean my brush. I'm going to add the darker shadows. So the darkest color right here, right? With water, right? And this our number 4, and the darkest color. We're going to add shadows. So inside, we're going to go in and start to add a little bit, not everywhere, just some parts. this to be the darkest in here. And then here, let's add some darker shadows, maybe the leaf bends. Just on the bottom. Okay. Starting to be a little more clear, which I like. It's looking pretty good. Add some darker details inside here. And then in here as well. We're just covering the bigger parts, and then with the detail brush we'll define it, make it cleaner. That'll be the last step. So a little more shadows. All right, so that's good. I'm gonna add a little bit of the green in here, or the darker green in here. I'm gonna quickly switch to my number 8 brush, and with water and a little bit of Viridian by itself. The reason why Viridian is because it's leaning more towards like a bluish green, and I like that on these leaves because of the snow and the light, right? It has more of a colder feel. Right now it's looking warm, but I want to add that glaze on some with this cooler feeling blue. I'm just going to glaze it on some of these. Just fill it in with a little bit of water and that Viridian straight out of the tube. Okay. And finally, with the detail brush and the darkest color, we're going to make our leaves sharper. Okay, with swirl your detail brush, some water, and your darkest color. I'll show you on some of these so you can see. For example, right here, I'm going to go over right on the bottom right here and create that dark shadow so that it'll look sharper. Okay. Maybe some are going in, but I'm trying to blend out to my leaves so that it won't look just like a black border around them, right? I'm going to quickly and this is where the details come in, and you take your time, be patient. Okay, and a little bit of that darker color in here. All right, so, and you don't want it everywhere, so I'm going to use a little bit, let's use a little bit of the lighter green, mix it with the darker green to get more of a in between, like a grayish green, and then go over, still pretty dark, but it's not too sharp, right? We want to, with these lighter parts, we want to go over it and make them. So I'm going to use a little more with water. Make it sharp, but not to make it stand out too much. Okay. So a little more of the darkest color. I want to make this darker inside here. Okay, something like that. I'm not a fan of this part right here, so what I'm going to do is clean my brush and add that lighter green color right to the edge. Just take it away a little bit. We want to create a little bit of shadows on some parts, right? But there you go. That's good enough. So let's continue with the darkest color. Here, I want to keep it pretty dark. So I'm just going to go over. With water. Okay, just like this. Some areas are going to be darker than others. And then here. Dab my brush slightly in the water. There you go. We don't want it to be too detailed, but we want to create some sharpness. and make these little details like this, right? We want to make our leaves looking sharp. So in here, I'm gonna play with the transitions like we did, maybe our lightest color and the darkest, mix those. Take away a little bit of the sharpness. That's good. We don't want it to stand out too much. And then you can continue creating your sharp details. Okay, so I'm gonna continue with this detail and try to make them, some of these looking sharper. And here, okay, and here, for example, you want to make some of these sharper. Separate them. All right, now I'm going to spend some time doing that with the dark shadows. And, you know, it doesn't have to look like mine, as long as you get some details of the shadows and darker shadows in, right? And then make some of them sharp so that it'll pop and look cleaner, right? And then after that, once we're done with that, I'm going to clean my brush. I'm going to do the same thing, but with my lightest highlight and water, for example, on certain parts. I'm not going to do everything like we did with the dark. I'm only going to go certain areas, for example, right here, right? I want to make this stand out a little more, so I'll add the shadow, barely pressing and letting it kind of fade out. Right? Maybe it goes in just certain areas. We don't want to overdo it. Just go over and add your final brighter highlights, and that will make your painting stand out even more. Okay, and I'm not going to do it everywhere, like I mentioned. I'm going to add a little bit in here. And a little bit in here. And it fades out. That's good right there. And this one, right? This is where I want my most highlights, brighter highlights to stand out. With water, I'm gonna go over. And create that final detail. I'm gonna do the same thing on this one. And remember, keep in mind, you don't want it to be bright inside because of the shadows. You mainly want to add it right where the light will hit it and fade out. Okay. And you can add as many highlights as you wish. So I'm going to spend time adding my darker shadows and my lighter shadows on here and also on top. Okay, it's the same technique. So just go over your top. There's a few leaves left. And once I'm done, I'll show you what I get. But basically, this is where you play around, go back and forth with these colors and adjust and have fun. And here's what we got so far. I did add some light highlights right here where the sharp areas are, just some parts to make it more looking sharper, right? But I'll be done with the leaves. I can always come back to any of the parts later. Next part, we're gonna focus on adding the snow, a quick layer, and then we're gonna mix some color for our fruits here. So let's pick up our number 4 and let's start with the lightest highlights, just white by itself. And we're gonna go over some of these and make them even brighter on top. And with just the white, we're gonna kind of start to add a little more brighter highlights. And fade it out. Okay, that's good enough. A few little sparkles of light from the snow. Mainly on top here, I want to brighten this area. Okay, and here I'm not going to add inside too much, but in here I will add a little more snow, maybe And I'll let it fade down. I'm not going to add too much. Okay. Bring it down just a bit more. That's good enough for that one. Okay, and then this one, I'm going to add a little bit in here. That's good right there. And some in here. We're going to go over these parts later. Okay, that's good. I don't want to overdo it, so let's continue in here. Okay, that's good in there. Let's continue. Let's add some snow in here. And we're just using the white for now. That's good right there. maybe some in here. Okay. All right, and now I'm going to use the next lightest color, this light blue that we mixed, and kind of randomly added the next shade of that light blue. Real quick, go over. We don't want it to look flat. We're just adding a little bit more shade. Okay, and once you did that, we can add the darkest color right here, blue, and right on the bottom on some of these we're gonna go over and add some shadows, darker shadows. Not everywhere, just on some parts. And we can go over some of these with the white later, again. Okay. For example, I'm going to switch to number 8, and with just the white now, I'm going to go over some of these, make them a little bit more detailed. And that's it. After this part, we can mix some colors for our fruits. Actually, there's one more little trick I want to show you. As the final thing we add, we're going to glaze a little bit of color so that it would look so that you could see that it's, maybe there's some snow almost falling here like this. All right, that's good enough. So with a little bit of, well, I already have that color. So I'm gonna just use my number 8 brush, clean it up completely, and some water and this green, just a little bit of this green and water by itself. We're gonna glaze it over some of our snow because of the light reflecting and hitting parts of the snow. We don't want too much. We want a little bit of warmth on some of our snow so that it won't look flat. You could see the glow of the light behind, right? When I add that warmth of the sunlight, just a little bit will make a big difference. Okay. All right, that's good enough. And here's the color for our fruit. Half a thumb amount of white, maybe a little less, and then crimson red, and then medium yellow, about the same amount, and then crimson red by itself, and then crimson red here, half a thumb, and a little bit of phthalo blue, and a touch of lamb black for the darkest color. And so now what I'm going to do is take part of this color I just mixed, just a little bit of it, about this much, and I want to lighten up this crimson red just a little bit, not too much. I want this one to be the darkest. And then for the snow, I just added titanium white, and then a little less titanium white here, and a touch of phthalo blue, and a small amount of lem black, less than phthalo blue right here. And this is in case I'm going to go over some of the snow, right? And then I'm going to add another layer, the snow on top of my, fruit here, and it's going to go over, and you'll see. And so I'll need a little bit of snow in case I paint over it, So I'll be working back and forth. And here we are. So with these colors, I'm going to start with detailing our cherries, adding darker shadows and lighter highlights, right? And then going back with the snow and covering it and adding snow around some of them, right? Like we did kind of right here. So I'm going to zoom in and we're going to work on the bottom area right here first. We got the middle section. We have more of those fruits right here. So we're going to just work here, and then there's a couple on top. I'm going to pick up my number 4, as always, dab it in the water and tap it on the paper towel so it could be damp. And we're going to start with the darkest color. Let's just start adding our darkest shadows first. Okay, and I'm going to go over and on the inside. And we're going to have to go over it with a detail brush as well. I'm just getting the big chunks first, and then I'll go over the more, clean it up and make it more rounder with a detail brush. There. And as you can see, I'm skipping some areas. I'm not adding everywhere because you want to create, again, depth and make it look more round, right? You don't want it to be. So maybe there's some shadow right in here. Okay, like this, and continue with that color. Right here, we're going to add darker shadow, maybe inside here. All right, just by adding this color, you start to see it's popping and it looks more rounder, right? That's what we want, creating shadows. Okay, that's good enough there. Very easy, simple. Around right here. It's good enough. Inside. On some of these. And some of them I'm going to paint over, like this one right here. So a little bit inside in here. This one right here. Okay. And I'm not sure if I should add one here. I think I will add it. Let's add it. A dark one. Well, you almost can't see it. Okay, real quick, go over all your fruits, wherever you think would look best. And I'm trying to keep it on one side. Sometimes I'll switch it up and add it on this side, but I want to keep it on one side. All right, so that's good with that color for now. I'm going to quickly clean my brush in the water and then tap it on paper towel. And now I'm gonna go the next color, this one that we have mixed, and then I'm gonna glaze it right where I left off. Make it look a little more on the red side. Just a tiny detail. Not adding too much. Continue real quick. Maybe some showing right here. All right, that's good enough. And finally, we're gonna clean our brush and add the lightest highlights. This color we have mixed. And we're just gonna quickly go over and add some of these highlights. Okay, that's good enough for now. I'm going to go back to the darkest color one more time with water. I wanted to glaze this bottom part, make it a little softer. All right, very small little detail like that. And now we can go with our detail brush, and we're gonna add, what I'm gonna do is mix a little bit of this color and white. So let's just take part of the white and mix it with that color, because I don't want it to be, I want a little bit of that pink orangey color. And I'm gonna add some bright highlights from the light. Okay, not everywhere. Make some of them a little bigger in highlights. Okay, for now that's good. We can always come back to these parts later. Let's make our cherries cleaner looking. So we're gonna use the detail brush and this darkest cherry color that we have mixed. Right? And we're just gonna go over and make it as clean and sharp as we want it to be, and as round as we want it to be. So dab your brush in water so it can run smooth, swirl it, and then go around the edge. and just clean it up. And you can make some of them go up like this, for example. Maybe this one goes up. And we're going to add some snow on these, some of them. So I'm not going to go too high. So maybe this one's overlapping. And then this one's overlapping. This one is more behind, right? And you could pick and choose which one you want to overlap. Okay, so this is where you can take your time. Maybe this one's overlapping here. Turn on some music and slowly add your details. And after this, we'll be done with the background, and then we're going to focus on the bird. And the bird is pretty small, so it shouldn't take that long to detail. We have a good foundation on it, so it should go smooth. All right, so you get the idea, right? Making them sharp and going over and, you know, separating some of them. I'm going to go with this middle color, and I'm going to try to add a little bit of that color in here. Make it a little darker. In red. There you go. And finally, you can use a little bit of white by itself with water, not too much paint, and add your really, you know, the brightest highlight that will make your fruits sparkle. Okay. And once you're done here, so I'm going to spend some time going over each, like I showed you here with the darkest color, and adding a few little highlights, and then you can go back and forth and try to make it as smooth as you want. You can blend the colors, play with the colors, you know, get an in-between color and try to even make it softer. For example, right here, right around the light, right? You could do all sorts of cool things like this. And try to make it look even more blended, right? With water. And you're making it look a little more softer, not as harsh. So don't rush, take your time. And then maybe some, for example, have some detail inside, right? Okay, work with the snow now. I go back to just white by itself. Actually, we can use this blue, this grayish blue color we mixed. And first we're gonna add some layers. For example, right here. And we're gonna let some snow come down. Okay, with your detail brush, you can add as much as you want. Bring it down a little bit, right? First with this light blue, grayish blue. Maybe there's a little bit of snow on here. Okay, not too much like this. And then we can go back with the white and go over some of them. So it looks like snow is going around some of them, right? Mainly on top. Add your lighter highlights. This is a small detail. And if you don't like something, you can always go back and forth and, paint it with these colors. Totally up to you. And remember, I said I'm going to cover this part right here. I'm going to show you. I'm going to use this grayish blue light color, add it on the bottom as a one of the darker shadows, right on the bottom. And then you can go with a white, lightly dab, and cover that part. Okay, and there you have it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to spend time, like I explained, detailing, going back and forth with the dark first, and try to make it a little cleaner like I did here on all these here, right? And once I'm done, I'll add the little highlights and then some of the snow like I did here. You don't want to go too much on everything, just a little bit where you want to create a transition, right? It's like blending. You want to create that smooth transition so it'll look easier to look, right? Because if it's too sharp, snow, and then all of a sudden these fruits, right, then it's like it's too sharp. You see how some snow is covering here, and then it's slowly transitioning into just a fruit by itself, right, on the bottom. That creates beautiful depth. Okay, once you're done detailing, I'm going to show you how to add some snow on some of these, right? And I also, by the way, added some leaves, little ones, to fill in some areas. You don't have to do this, totally up to you. So, like we did with the other snow parts, right? We're going to start with this bluish color and just kind of add it randomly with your detail brush. It's okay if it goes down a little bit. Randomly add it, creating some darker shadows of snow first. Okay, that's good there. And I'm just going to add it everywhere. All right, that's good right there. A little bit on this side. It's a little detail that you can't see yet. But once we start to add the snow, the white color, it'll come to life. So now we're just using titanium white, and we're gonna make it have some snow over it, and then let it just kind of fade out. You could bring the snow, mix it with that light blue a little bit, right? We don't want too much blue showing, that grayish blue color, right? We want more white. Okay, that's good right there. And then do some of these. I'm going to continue this style until I get everything done, and then finally we can work on our bird. I can bring you down here a little bit. Okay, that's good right there. I'll do one more, and then I'll show you what I get once I'm done with the whole background. If you're loving this tutorial and you're ready to go deeper with your painting, I'd love to invite you to my mentorship program. This is where I teach my most in-depth lessons, the ones I don't share anywhere else. Inside the mentorship, you'll get access to exclusive full-length tutorials, personalized feedback on your paintings from me, live Q&A calls where you can connect and ask questions, monthly painting challenges, giveaways, and more. This is my inner circle of artists who are serious about growing their skills. It's been amazing to see the progress our members make, and I'd love for you to join us. If you're interested, there'll be a link in the screen or also in the description down below. All right, let's get back to painting. And here's what we got so far. I can always come back to any part later. Let's finish off this painting and add details, final details to our bird here. These are the colors I got. So just white by itself, and then half a thumb amount of white here, a little bit of medium yellow, and a small amount of crimson red. And then here we got less white, and then Viridian, Phthalo blue, and a very small amount of Lem black, and then Lem black by itself. All right, so you could see I added the eye right there a little bit, but I'll go over all this later with you guys. So let's add another layer. Start with the darkest color in our number 4 brush. I'm gonna use this black and fill in the areas that are gonna be the darkest. For example, right here, around the eye, and it's okay if you go over the first sketch. We're going to bring that out. About this much. And then here, I'm going to add the darkest color here. And we're just covering the bigger areas first. Okay, and then the darkest area in here. Okay. And then a little bit in here, not too much. I'm going to dab my brush in the water, clean it up, and then I still have a little bit of black, but not too much. I'm going to use this color next. Okay. And just glaze it, mix it in with the black a little bit. And I already like my background color, so I'm not going to go over too much. I'm just adding another layer to make it look softer before I start going over with my detail brush, right? So let's use this color again and add some grayish blue highlights in here. Okay, continue on with this color. I'm gonna go over and add a little bit of that color in here in the belly. And dab my brush lightly in the water. And then pick up more of this color and gently back and forth blend those colors in. I'm going to use a little bit of this orange red color. I want to add a little bit of red in here. And then clean my brush completely. And then let's use a little bit of this brightest light orange color and go over some of these lighter parts just by adding a glaze. And we can add a little bit of that layer in here. Okay. I'm going to add a little more. Let's add a little more of this color in here. We'll bring it down a little bit like this. You could use a little bit of white. Barely pressing. Creating lighter highlights. Not too much because we're going to go over with our detail brush. Okay, and then I'm going to use this color again, and right here on top I'm going to create a little bit of a lighter highlight because of the light. Okay, and bring some of that in here. Okay, I'm going to clean my brush, and I'm going to use a little bit of this color and mix those two together. I'm going to add that in here. Go back to the black. Barely pressing and adding some darker shadows. Okay. A little more right here. Okay, so for now that's good. I'm going to switch over to my detail brush and start to define it and make it look a little cleaner. Oh, by the way, let's add the little bit of the dark with just the black by itself. We're gonna add a little bit, and you could use your detail brush as well for this part. I'm just adding it real quick on the legs so that I can see the image a little more cleaner. All right, now it's time to detail and add some hair. All right, our detail brush and some water in plain white. We're gonna swirl and create some details. So starting from here, I'm just gonna start to add little hair. You want some of them to go up. Different directions, right? Okay. Follow the pattern of your bird, right? So if it's moving this way, the hair, you follow that, right? And then here, it's moving down in. Okay. And we'll continue this with water and plain white. We're going to start to add more hair, feathers. Make it look softer. Okay. Keep going. Follow the bird. Here, I'm going to create some little ones. This is the kind of the brightest area here. Okay. So just white and some water. Here, it's going to kind of swirl. Like that. So a little more white. I'm going to add some lighter highlights. Let's use a little bit of this yellowish color with water. And we're going to add some details. Like this. To our feathers. And then in here, I'm going to create this lighter highlight separation like this, and add little hair in here. Okay, dab my brush in the water, continue using this color with water. Okay, we're going to add some highlights right inside like this. And let it fade out. Continue adding a little bit of the brighter highlights on the beak. And then around the eye, remember? So a little bit of whites here, and then leave a little space, okay, around the eye. Let's add a little bit more of white right in the middle, like this, so it can stand out. A little bit, maybe a little dot right there. There you go. So I'm going to take it out a little bit. I don't want it to be too big, so with a little bit of black, make it a little smaller. So it won't stand out too much. Okay, something like this. And then clean our brush. Let's use a little bit of this color, it's bluish green, mix it with the white and water. And we're going to add some hair on the head, small little details like this. And then white by itself with water. I'm going to create some lighter highlights on top. And clean my brush. And you could add as much, I'm doing this kind of faster pace, but you could see now I'm going with the second layer, the final layer, and I'm adding little hair. After adding the big hair, I'm going back and adding the smaller parts. I want to create more of the lighter highlight on this side, so I'm going to add more white there. Okay, like this. And then I want to add a little more white in here. I'm going to go a different direction like this a little bit. Add a lot of little ones here. So I'm going to spend some time working on the highlights, and then also you can go back to maybe a little bit of this green and mix it with this. And then let's add some shadows inside here. A little bit of a darker shadows, right? Doing the same thing, just making it look more detailed, and then making sure it's a smoother transition so it won't be black and then all of a sudden just white. This helps us see the little hair details better. Adding some darker shadows. And you can do the same thing here, right? And you can maybe even use, let's use a little bit of a darker color. Let's use this and maybe mix it with the red, why not? This is a good color right here. And we'll go over and add some darker shadows inside, right? It's a lot of back and forth. So a little bit more darker. I want this to be a little bit more in the darker shadow right here, and then let it fade. All right. Back to the light, just the white. Let's add some bigger hair. Longer ones. And I'm going to clean my brush. I'm going to use black by itself. And now I can add a little bit more darker hair on some parts here. Going down. Creating more of a smoother transition. So just the black and water. And the beak here, I'm going to make it a little more rounder on top. Okay, and then here, and try to create a smoother fade from the black. To this lighter color. And you can add some dark hair with the black right in here. And then finally the feet. I'm going to go over with the black, create some shadows. Add some darker hair. Same thing here, a little bit of hair that is a little darker. And bring it down. And the feet kind of dig in the snow, so they don't have to be perfect. So now I'm going to use a little bit of this orange color that we have and mix it with a little bit of black. This red orange. And then we're going to add a little highlight. On top here is a transition, so it won't just be black. And then finally we're going to add just the white by itself. I didn't clean my brush well. So a little more white. Maybe hair is coming around it. Okay, rough looking. A little bit of a highlight in here. And let it fade to the snow. And now with our number 8 brush and some water and a little bit of medium yellow, we're going to glaze and make our bird a little more colorful. Transparent glaze with water like this, not too much paint. All right, and we're going to add it where the brighter yellow parts are. And just kind of glaze it to make it more colorful. Okay, I'm going to add that a little bit in here. And on the inside right here. Very small amount. And then let's add some in here. Okay, that's good enough. Mainly right here. I want this to be bright. Little color in here. All right, and you can do the same thing with your white color. I cleaned my brush, just the white by itself. And you can make certain parts even brighter with color. For example, right here, I want this to be lighter in color. So I'm going to glaze it gently. Let it fade to the yellow we just added. All right, and that's basically it. Now it's totally up to you how much you want to add, right? If you want to go back and forth and make it smoother, have even more hair going on, you can do that. That's actually what I'll do. I'm going to spend some time working on making it a little more detailed by going over with my detail brush. For example, right here, right? I'm going to add like a bunch of little hair for fun. I have paint left, so why not? Okay, and here it is. I'll be done for today. You can spend as much time as you want to any of the parts that you'd like to correct. And I did win over with medium yellow and some water, added a little more color to my bird, had fun with that. Totally up to you. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please be sure to like and subscribe and stay tuned for more. Take care and God bless.